Hello, everyone. My name is Fabian. I am the acting product manager for GitLab's memory team. And this is our planning for GitLab's next release 13.11. And I'm also joined here by Nicola, a senior backend engineer in the team, who's giving me some moral support today. So the first thing to know is that the team is currently operationally quite involved in some rapid actions to resolve performance issues on the overall GitLab platform. So the planning here reflects this because we have some sort of other operational work to do. There's not as much new going on. There are essentially two larger themes in here and a couple of things that prepare us for the major release for 14.0. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the splitting the application into functional parts to ensure that only needed code is loaded with all dependencies. And this has been something where Nicola was really involved driving this. So this is a huge architectural change that provides many benefits. For the memory team, obviously quite important is the overall reduction in memory consumption. And so we actually successfully concluded 3 POCs, so proof of concepts that showcased how this approach is beneficial to GitLab as a whole. And see, these were the grape engine POC, moving GraphQL, and the web controller work. And as an outcome of that, we've created sort of an architectural blueprint, which you can see in here, which is currently being discussed. So a lot of work has gone into this already, and where we are really at is wrapping up the ongoing discussion on the composable code base, and then based on the outcomes of that, defining very clear next steps. You know, what are the iterations that actually bring us closer to a world where GitLab is in a position where we can really load only the parts that we need and require. So that's something that will happen in 13.11. So this is not going to be necessarily an actionable sort of shipped feature, but it is preparing us for a future in which this is potentially possible. This is really an architectural decision that also requires the memory team to provide sort of information and guidelines potentially to the wider GitLab developer community so that they can work with that as well. So this is one of the areas that we are continuing to work in. Nicola, was that a good representation of your work?
Perfect. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Super. And the other thing, and this is actually quite exciting, and this is the reduction of memory consumption for specific endpoints that we use. And just as a reminder, the memory team is really concerned about sort of the memory efficiency of GitLab as a whole, both on the low end, so for very small deployments, but also at any scale. And so we've recently added functionality that now allows us to measure sort of per request and per worker memory allocation statistics. And that is really valuable because it allows us to go into our system and understand in detail, you know, what feature categories or what specific endpoints use how much memory. And this is going to be an area of focus for us going forward. We're going to focus on 2 specific components, Puma and Sidekick. What we're going to do is we're going to identify endpoints that are particularly heavy on memory allocation. And then we are going to try to understand how we can actually reduce the memory consumption, fix them if we can, document specific patterns that we observe, and provide ultimately guidelines and maybe in a later iteration also alerting on these very heavy endpoints. And this is really, I think, a showcase for, you know, if you have the data, you can look at specific problematic areas, you can really understand what's going on. So we're going to utilize that. We still have to do a little bit of work to break this down further. But as an example, for example, this one here is one item that we created very recently, which is an endpoint here that has, for example, some properties that, you know, lead to very high memory consumption. And, you know, we're going to like go into those specific items and try to figure out what is going on, fix them. And we should really be able to measure the impact here as well, given that we have the data. So that's going to be a big project that we're going to kick off in 13.11. And then lastly, there is a major release coming up, and we need to plan for some of the deprecations and removals. So for example, the removal of Unicorn support in 14.0, we just want to make sure that the experience is very smooth and that there are no issues when upgrading to that release. And that's memory for 13.11. Thank you everyone for listening. We're excited about moving into these areas and see you next time. Thank you.